What if you take Konami's iconically difficult gameplay of Contra and infuse it with Arc System Works style and presentation? You get the game we're talking about today, Hardcorp's Uprising. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. With Daisuke Ishitari, the Japanese video game developer, illustrator, musician, composer, and voice actor, born in Johannesburg, South Africa. Usually doing all these things with one of the most iconic gaming franchises, Guilty Gear. Designing the characters, writing the story, and making the iconic music.
That is bullshit blazing, still my heart is blazing. If the words kill me, I don't need it.
When he's not voice acting the franchise's protagonist, Soul Badguy.
悪いがこの件ジェリーフィッシュ海賊団に仕切らせて
Hideyuki Anbe, directing, planning, and scenario writing for Hardcorp's Uprising, with producer Kenji Yamamoto, making this a creation from Arc System Works' all-star cast. Internally, the team at Arc System Works wanted to make a Contra-ish game based off the Sega Genesis classic Contra Hardcorps. Konami seemed to want them to make the next Contra game, while Arc System Works wanted to make Hardcorps into its own franchise.
Now, I've heard that this is somewhat of a spiritual spin-off from Contra. Is that, if I'm not correct on that?
That's pretty good. I think probably the best way to explain it to gamers is it's a Contra game, but it's not the next Contra game. What we did was we were heavily inspired by Contra Hardcore, as you probably may have heard. We were working on maybe doing a Contra game, possibly. We're thinking about maybe working together on that. But as talks progressed, we realized that there's a lot of things that we want to do, and they wanted to do with the 2D run and gun, with the run and gun genre, with that kind of game, that we weren't sure if we really want to attach the Contra name to it, because I think Contra's a really storied franchise, and it's had maybe 20 some odd years of games. Everybody kind of has their favorite Contra. They have their certain idea of what Contra is.
Plus, I think that would probably limit you a little bit more to what you could do. When you start up a new IP, you have a little bit more freedom, right?
Right. So I think for us, creatively, we really wanted to try something kind of different with the run and gun genre, hence partnering with Arc System Works on this. So
Technically, Uprising is a prequel to the Sega Genesis title. Hardcorp's Uprising was released on February 16th, 2011 on Xbox Live Arcade and PSN, alongside its character DLC.
Now, how about difficulty? Because the Contra games are known for brutal difficulty. Are we going to be chucking our controllers against the wall with this one too?
yes.
Arc System Works didn't want to ruin what made Contra great, like the difficulty and the ability to memorize levels. But they also wanted to make it accessible for new and casual players. So in Japan, Contra Hardcorps had a life bar. The Western version didn't, making it incredibly difficult in comparison. Believing the run and gun shooter is something everybody could enjoy, while also not wanting to lose their hardcore audience, Arc System Works decided that along with adding a health bar, they'd create the arcade and rising game modes. Now, arcade mode is the embodiment of gaming Darwinism.
Okay guys, unfortunately it didn't work. My legs are now both broken.
You get a set amount of lives with a set amount of credits, and you have to survive the 8-stage gauntlet that is the Uprising campaign. Its difficulty was meant to emulate the Super Nintendo and regular Nintendo difficulties seen back in the day. Games weren't exactly very big, so to get your 10 to 60 hours out of them, you would have to make it so goddamn hard that you could never actually beat it. Arcade mode is Hardcorp's hard mode, so make sure to keep your head on a swivel and make sure that little green bullet doesn't accidentally hit you, or you'll lose everything. Rising mode is handled kind of like an RPG, mixed with a character action game, where you're given points for your speed, kills, and other special actions during missions, including styling your way through those levels. Speed is the major factor in how many points you'll get, and you'll need them because the shop is where this mode shines. You can purchase more lives, more health, faster movement speed, extra jumps and dashes, including secret moves for some of the cast. And the most important thing you buy in the shop?
Guns.
Everyone in Hard Corps, except for Sayori, use guns. There are 6, technically 7 weapons in the game. You got your standard basic gun, basic bitch shit. Nothing special, it shoots as fast as you press the fire button. And if you're hit a lot, you'll be maining this weapon and also have carpal tunnel syndrome. That's because if you're hit, you lose any weapon and will be downgraded to this weapon. So let's start with the alumni of Contra weapons, the super machine gun and the spread shot, because you can't have a Contra game without them. The super machine gun is a constant stream of devastating bullets. While not the best gun in the game, it can take you very far. While the spread shot is your screen clearer, your kitchen gun.
I love you, kitchen gun!
When there are so many enemies on the screen that you just can't get rid of them, the spread shot will clean them up for you. So you can just walk through some levels with it, but it's still heavily nerfed from basically all of its Contra iterations. It's still going to carry you through some of the mosh pits that this game can produce though. Now the Hideyuki on the other hand is easily one of the best weapons in the game. It's a chargeable fireball that can absorb small projectiles and might do the most damage of any weapon in Hard Corps. If you still have this for a boss, you're going to legitimately melt them. But it also goes through enemies, so when you're speed running, you can fire this and run behind it while it kills the enemies in front of you. This might be the most useful weapon in the game, especially when trying to get those high scores. Going from the best weapon in the game to easily the worst. Crash. Crash is a very short range grenade that lands directly in front of you, but it does do a fuck ton of damage. But because of the short range and awkward arc, it is very situational. The Ripple is only slightly better, but it also has an even shorter range. But it can protect you against weaker enemies and bullets, because it deflects them back at the enemy while letting you run freely, all while operating like a shitty flamethrower when you're standing still. The second best weapon in the game is the laser. It is the screen clearing weapon. Like the spread shot, it is a screen clearing weapon. But that's because of its homing properties, not because of the amount of bullets it puts on the screen. And it also does a lot of damage very quickly. This is the go-to weapon, but it's also very rare. When you have this and the heated plasma, you're basically set. Just don't get hit, because all these weapons have 3 tiers to them. Usually when you pick up a weapon capsule, it'll change into a different gun, based on the letter and number that's on the capsule. Unless you grab a repeat, then it'll increase in level, increasing its amount of bullets, the size, the speed, and the amount of damage done. Basically everything you need to get past these levels. You usually want to have a protected gun, your laser or your heated plasma, to get you through the hardest sections and difficult boss fights, even if it is difficult. Arcade and Rising mode are the core of Hard Corps, with each mode showcasing the cast's many strengths and weaknesses. Now that changes between these modes. With Arcade mode, your starting health and mobility are vastly different among the cast, but you start with all their interactable skills. So it's just pure gameplay for the most part. But this is when the store comes in. In Rising mode, you're allowed to purchase upgrades from the store, being able to purchase health and weapon upgrades, equalizing every character eventually. The only real difference is each character starts with their own skills, and some of the upgrades are cheaper for each character. The cast will eventually level out, and everyone will be just as capable as the rest, with the DLC characters like Sayori and Leviathan having their own mechanics entirely, being the only difference. Bahamut, the main protagonist of Uprising, is an ex-soldier of the Commonwealth Army, but after witnessing an Imperial squad execute innocent people, he left and is now the leader of the Hard Corps. now actively going against the Commonwealth. Initially started with 3 health bars, and also having pretty average speed, he is kind of the Ryu of hardcorps. He is the baseline for everything this game is measured by. He is perfectly designed to be average with everything, being just good enough to get the job done. Crystal, a woman with probably no combat experience, but after her hometown is attacked by Imperial forces, she decides to join Bahamut. She wears an eye patch on her right eye and is one of the fastest characters in the game, with the second lowest health. Basically built for speedrunners. These are the only characters you'll be allowed to play as unless you pay for the DLC. Speaking of which, Harley Daniels, a pompadour having bike riding soldier. Surprisingly, that's all of his personality. But he is the tankiest of the hardcorps with 4 health bars, making him one of the better characters to try arcade mode with, until you play Sayori. A samurai who wears a kimono and sugasa, a katana user that can charge her blade for long range attacks, playing like a side-scroller Devil May Cry character, and is the adopted daughter of Tiberius, the leader of the Imperial forces. She is out for revenge after he left her and her mother. She can't use anything but her katana, but she might be the best member of the hardcorps. Her close range damage is as good as you can mash, turning most bosses into chalk outlines with her mere presence. Then we got Leviathan, Bahamut's former friend and rival when he was still in the Commonwealth. Spoilers for anyone who cares. But he dies at the end of the game, so you're playing through his dream sequence where he imagines what Bahamut went through. Only being able to use one gun and throw grenades instead of switching weapons, and only having 1 health. And I personally think he is the hardest character to play as in the game.
Mission start. Time to attack.
Level 1, Desert. This is the uprising of the hardcorps, and this is their journey to the Commonwealth capital to kill Tiberius and stop his armies from ruining lives anymore. And it all starts with the hardcorps infiltrating a battlefield in the middle of the desert. This is Contra 3 Alien Wars, but instead of blowing up Detroit City, we're in a desert battlefield. All the same marks are hit with a giant wall of destruction you must destroy, sinking into the sand while a giant sandworm robot destroys your platforms, instead of a giant fire pillar destroying everything. That's all before the mid-level boss fight, getting on a motorcycle, a lot like hardcorps on the Sega Genesis actually. Now, fighting that giant enemy sandworm in the middle of a quicksand pit and destroying it. Before getting back on your motorcycle and ditching this joint, but not before he comes back. Jumping off to save yourself by helicopter. This is an exhilarating first level. Level 2, Jungle. With snipers that will do a shit ton of damage to you if they ever lock onto you. It can be deflected with the power of hype. Almost invisible plants that can poison you and will heavily damage you if you're poisoned. You can't sprint anymore or dash. They're almost invisible because of the foliage hiding everything. And with how fast this game moves sometimes, you'll lose them and the enemies, taking bullshit hits. Then there's also Piranha that will attack and attach to you, ending in a boss battle with the playable DLC character Leviathan piloting a mech that uses samurai skills, sniper shots, and drones. It's a very cool fight when you actually learn it, with him teleporting around the map and then dashing attacks with a sword or trying to snipe you from long distance while the drones attack. Level 3, Ruins. Blowing through walls and fighting lots of annoying and powerful enemies. This level is like a maze that you can't get lost in, where every section is an incredibly difficult puzzle that you must figure out. From the massive robots to the falling rocks, this is where most arcade runs will go to die. This level is all about Indiana Jones style traps. Till you're finally able to escape. You'll have to fight a giant battleship from hell. Level 4 Capital Highway. You'll be traveling on your way to Capital City using rocket-powered hoverboards. This might be one of the most insane levels in this game. There is so much shit on screen. Without a power weapon, I don't know how it's doable. Without dying an immense amount of times, which I did. Between the obstacle course mid-level and the 3-dimensional boss fight at the end, this is one of my favorite levels, even if it does beat my ass. Level 5, Capital Laboratory. Starting out with an optional stealth mission that I've never once succeeded in, no matter how many times I've tried. Going into a miserable factory area that, for some reason, has magma in it. Like a vicious Mega Man level. Every enemy on screen just wants to knock you into the magma. That's it. With the lab producing elite robots meant to win wars. This level beat the hell out of me. Fighting your way through rooms full of elite robots that explode when destroyed, blowing up the capsules holding more badass robots, releasing them. And that's all before an escort mission and a boss fight. Level 6, Capital Railway. We're going to be riding a rail car this entire level. It's like a combination of Donkey Kong Country and Gunstar Heroes, with the rail cars being destroyed and replaced all the time. Jumping from one rail car to the next, fighting all the way through until you run into the flame tunnel. To do this properly, you need precognition, or, playing it a few times. And let's not forget the worst fucking boss fight in the game. Every hit equals death, so fuck health. It's all about how many lives you got. Sometimes, you just kinda lose them. But don't worry, the developers understood that this boss fight's fucking harder than living with an alcoholic father. That's why they gave you a checkpoint halfway through it. Level 7, Capitol Tower Building. Entering the Capitol through the front door, using the most badass way possible. Using the train you rode on, you now get to fight every single enemy you've dealt with through the entire campaign, all mixed and matched to cause you maximum pain and suffering. Before a kind of easy elevator section, depending on the weapon you have. With a very dangerous parkour section after all the elevators have been destroyed. Climbing up the side of the building while helicopters harass you the whole time. Then riding rockets up another elevator shaft till you get to the top. Then meeting Leviathan once again, chasing him while he's using everything he has to kill you. Even burning down the tower while we're still in it before he throws everything at you. With one of the fastest boss fights in the game. Once you understand the pattern, the fight's a lot easier, but until then, holy shit!
Mission clear.
Level 8, Battleship. Riding a motorcycle across a massive battleship after using a missile to reach it. Fighting across the flagship while all hell breaks loose from the rest of the fleet firing into the ship aiming for you. The last level never lets up, with a rough battle against the core of the ship on a rotating floor that you can fall off of while trying to survive all of this shit. I died a lot here. Then we got Tiberius himself, the 3-stage final boss fight, and it might be one of the hardest side-scrolling boss fights I've ever dealt with. Now, if you're properly equipped, it's a lot easier to get through the first 2 stages with him. Form 1 is just a badass dude dashing around throwing shit all over the screen. It's like fighting Albert Wesker in a side-scroller. But just like in Resident Evil 5, he transforms. This form is tough. With his giant mutated arm and his ability to create clones of himself that are zombies, spitting fire everywhere and even doing ground pounds just to hit you. This fight is very dangerous. Unless you actually keep your burner weapon. Then you can just spam him. You might not even have to see the second phase of his second phase, if done right. Then we got the horrifyingly vile, vicious third phase. While falling from the battleship that was just destroyed, he transforms once more into a flying hell beast, shooting fireballs, biting you, and destroying everything in sight. And you have to use the falling debris to jump up while he destroys it. If you get hit, chances are you're going to die, so you're going to be losing credits a lot. On top of the fact that you can destroy the debris as well, meaning you can kill yourself. But God, does it feel good when you finally win. And he keeps going, so you have to make sure you don't fall. Especially if it's your last life. I have never loved a game this much that always had me constantly saying, I fucking loathe this game. I hated it on almost every level, but kept playing because I had to see what the next level was going to be and what it was going to fuck me up the ass with. It is probably the best Contra-like game on the market, even now. And the set pieces and the presentation, the music is amazing. With speed running and a high skill ceiling in mind when they were developing it. It's just so sad that we're not going to get a sequel. If you liked this video, remember, like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for finishing the video.